drink champagne, some die of thirst. No way of knowing which way it's going. Hope for the best, expect the worst. Hope for the best.
Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Monday, October 21st, 2024. I'm John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine. With me, as always, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
And senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
Yeah, just the three of us today. And guess what? The race is tied. I don't know if you... breaking news, hottest news in the world, polling all weekend showing a tied race. Although, according to the prognosticators, both at 538 and, of course, the legendary Nate Silver, all have the percentage odds of Trump beating Harris edging up to the astonishing somewhere between 52 and 54%. Nonetheless, since those same prognosticators with their models being like, as I think I've compared them before, to the M5, the computer on Star Trek, whose owner dissociates himself from his own computer and is constantly saying things like, "No, don't touch the M5. The M5 will," and the M5 tries to take over the Enterprise and kill everybody. They talk about the model as though the model is some kind of an independent, living, breathing creature like the Frankenstein monster, whereas it's, of course, only a bunch of inputs that they themselves created to put in the model. Nonetheless, their models are now showing Trump with a tiny margin of likelihood that he will beat Harris for the first time in, I don't know, I think a month or 2 months or something like that. Still, 51% chance is statistically inseparable from a 49% chance, really. So, just means 51 times out of 100, if you roll a die, it'll come up, 5. Well, you roll dice, 51 tie, you'll win. You'll get, 49% you won't. This is a terrible analogy. I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. Whatever it is, if you're picking a lot, whatever, 51 times you would get this, 49 times you would get that. So it takes nothing for it to go the other way. Okay,
Yeah,
so tied race.
538 is doing something similar to that flip, where they run the model based on the yesterday's up to date as they can from yesterday's numbers, and they have Trump out of 100. They have Trump winning 53,
right, and
Harris winning 47. So it is
right, and I think
that's the closest thing we have to a statistical coin flip, I guess.
Right. And there's a big battleground state poll reported on this morning in the Washington Post that basically says everything is tied everywhere. Nationally, in all the 7 states, one state, supposedly Harris might be up in Georgia by 6, but Trump is up in Arizona by 5. I mean, you have to look at it to see the sets of circumstances. But the 3 states that will, it appears, decide the election, the blue walls of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, are statistically indistinguishable from one another and between Harris and Trump. So I want to ask you guys a question dealing with the logic of campaign events over the next 15 days when the election will finally, come to a close, since the election is going on now since people are voting. So on the one hand, you have these micro targeting things on TikTok and here, and they're trying to appeal to one-eyed Hispanic trans influencers between the ages of 24 and a half and 24 and 3/4 with an ad that shows this and that, and you hear all this, and they're doing all this hard data work. And they're going, and Harris has moved to the battleground, the blue wall states, and she's just going to do events in the blue wall states. And on the other hand, there is this idea that somewhere between 140 and 170 million people are going to vote. So though it may come down to 40 or 50,000 people in the 3 states, we're talking about a gigantic country in which you can't reach 140 or 150 million people anymore with anything except the Super Bowl. And does any of this matter if the race is moving in this unbelievably glacial fashion? Does it matter that Trump had what I'm sorry, I gotta say, was a fantastic hour-long stunt yesterday at the McDonald's in Pennsylvania, which is actually worth watching. There's a sort of 55-minute clip of it that the Times of London put out. Just, I guess everybody probably has it, but just of him in the fry room and learning how to use the fryer and how to do the salt. And he's got his red tie on with the yellow straps of the McDonald's apron. And I don't know that I've seen a better, more amusing, more clever troll stunt game than this. I don't know when. I mean, I can't. It was just funny and charming.
And by the way, I have to add,
yeah,
it's joyous, actually.
Right. Okay. That's an important point, by the way, which we should get to in a minute, because that goes to where the Harris campaign is going. But I mean, does that change anything? I mean, he wins today.
This is kind of like when he did.
Does anything change anything? Is what I'm saying.
I don't know, but he did this in 2016, right, with the truck. The dirt move, was it an earth mover? He got into one of these like big earth mover trucks and he banged on the horn, right? And he made a face like, ah. And that was the front cover. I remember because I was at the Post at the time, at the New York Post, and that was the wood. Was Trump like making this face, banging on the wheel, whatever. And the quote that came out of the event was, "I love trucks." There's something about the way
yesterday. What did he say? He said, "I love McDonald's.
Yeah, I love
jobs." He said, "I love McDonald's.
I love jobs. Yeah,
I love jobs." Then he did this thing with salt. He was salting the fries. And he was like, "What if you want a little more salt?" And then he said, "Oh, I dropped the salt." And then he took salt and he threw it over his shoulder. He's like, "I'm very superstitious, and you got to throw it over the left shoulder." And just talking to the guy who was showing him how to use the fryer, whom I'm sure now will, love Trump till his dying day. Yeah, so he is good at these sorts of things. And guess who's not good at them?
Right.
So Kamala Harris is in Milwaukee having some kind of an event, faced with a protester who stands up in a keffiyeh. Looked Jewish to me. I don't know if you guys saw him, but if somebody said I need a minion and that guy showed up, I would probably say I wouldn't ask to, see his Jewish birth certificate saying there are 19,000, children dead in Gaza. There's a genocide going on. Why don't you talk about that? And he was sort of pulled out of the event. And then she said, I don't have it in front of me. She said, what he's talking about is real. And, that's not what I'm here to talk about, but it's real. And I honor his passion or something like that. Yeah. And what his passion was saying that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. And she explicitly endorsed the idea, though her campaign later said she didn't. But I don't know how you can't say what he said is real. And what he was saying was Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza. How is that not an endorsement of the idea that Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza?
Yeah, she's terrible.
Wrong.
No. Of course, she's terrible at this. And the other thing, just to keep the Trump half of the split screen in play here, is that you say, does it help? Does it mean anything? It does, in the sense that we've been seeing for weeks since the Harris campaign has decided that she is going to get out in front of more people and face more questions. I mean, she's exposed the fact that she's not real at all, and that has hurt her. And Trump's appearance yesterday showed he's very real. I mean, he lies, but he's a real guy. And he could be a real guy for hours on end without a teleprompter. And I'm using substance here to mean human substance, not to mean intellectual or policy substance. There's substance on one side, and on the other side, there's fielding questions, fielding interruptions, balancing interests, not wanting to get too far to the right of this group or too far to the left of that group, and that's all there is on her side.
Seth, the other thing that happened this weekend with Trump that caused a kind of Mrs. Grundy puritanical, Boston censoring in Boston from the 1940s attitude among our friends on Twitter who, basically exist to find every single thing that happens with Trump to be an event not unlike the opening of Buchenwald or something like that, is that he arrived at Arnold Palmer Airport and then proceeded to do a disquisition about how great Arnold Palmer was, going down to, do you guys know about the extraordinary girth of his manhood? Okay. So
no one's ever going to drink an iced tea lemonade the same way again. It's never going to be the same.
So once again, I guess it's a Rorschach test. Like, should a presidential candidate be talking about Arnold Palmer's schlong? I think you could say, while there is a war going on in Gaza, while there is a war going on in Lebanon, while there is a war going on in Ukraine, while there are cleanup efforts in North Carolina and all of that, no, a presidential candidate should not be engaging in such matters. He should be focused on more serious matters. But come on, who are we talking about here? And why is this a negative? I mean, this is where I get to the weirdness part, which is, imagine that the situation were reversed and Biden, out of nowhere, went off on some kind of a reverie thing last year at Arnold Palmer Airport, talking about how, man, he was so great and so he played so well, and people used to be afraid of him and all this, and they say about him, oh boy, that's what they used to say about Arnold Palmer. Let me tell you right now, would, in the Rorschach test world, wouldn't people go, he's so relatable, Biden? It's so true. He's really kind of charming, and he just being himself. And so you have to hate the self before you decide that the thing that you're doing, if you're Trump, is bad.
Right, because the thing that connects the two, the McDonald's and the Arnold Palmer, is that Trump narrates his inner monologue. And that is what you see at every event. And so, I got to throw some salt over the shoulder, like you said, right? And these are like the thoughts that come to people. Said he just narrates what goes through his head without a filter. And so you have to, you can't really be shocked by anything, because the idea is among a lot of people on the left that Trump is, this sort of like demonic guy. If you believe that there's nothing he won't do, nothing he won't stop at to secure his own power, then you shouldn't be surprised by anything he says, right? And anything he says is what anything that goes through his head comes out his mouth. So I think that there's this it feels very kind of staged, because not staged, but it just feels very fake, because that this guy doesn't have a filter, and when he gets going, it all comes out, every thought that goes through his brain. And so if you also think that he's one of these guys who's got a master plan for the superior MAGA race to take over the globe and put people in camps and do all this stuff, like, it's surprising to me that anyone who thinks of Trump as having this incredible thirst for power and also a plan to go along with it would be surprised that he has a weird thought in his head.
I think I like where Seth's going with this, because I think what a lot of this does, there's so much silliness in Trump that I think it serves to deflate the oh my God, there's going to be a fascist takeover talk. It's like, how is the guy in the apron, handing out the fries at the window, talking about Arnold Palmer in the locker room. This is the guy that speaks like Mussolini and Hitler, and is
And
going
they
a
put
lot of people.
the picture of Xi Jinping. Was it Xi at the fry doing the fries? The Chinese leader doing, and somebody put that picture up and said, "Look, the CCP does this too." But then it's like, but the point is, what Abe is saying is that but Xi doesn't talk about Arnold Palmer.
He's just
Throw
ridiculous.
salt over his shoulder.
But I think
once you see the vision, the picture side by side. But as soon as Trump speaks, you have a completely different experience of the person.
So two different things are going on, and a multiplicity of stories confirm what I was intuiting last week from Harris's behavior, which is that they have decided or determined in Wilmington that the message that they need to retail to the very tiny sliver of undecided voters in the 7 battleground states is twofold. One is that Trump is dangerous, and the other is that Trump is crazy or senile. And when he goes around and acts wacky, and I don't mean senile wacky, I mean wacky. He's doing a fry cooking with his tie on, for example, or does the Arnold Palmer shtick, both of which he was doing with a smile on his face. At the very moment that you are getting this grave idea that he is a combination of Willie Stark from All the King's Men and the leader from Sleeper, or something like that, there's something wrong with this picture.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're not also retailing the picture. They're talking about Arnold Palmer, and they're talking about the fry thing and saying, you know what? The McDonald's was closed, so the whole thing was a photo op. Oh, you think the McDonald's was going to be open so that a guy who was at the fry window, who has just been shot at twice and had a third guy show up to try to shoot him at a rally at Coachella, and has the Iranians looking to assassinate him, is going to be operating a fry cooker at an open McDonald's in the suburbs? Are you people have a brain, you morons? Like, this is like when people thought it was the great killer app for the Joe the plumber guy who stood up and said, "What about my taxes?" to John McCain, and he said, "I'm Joe the plumber." And then it was like, his name's not really Joe. His name is Sam. He's a sham. It's a fraud. Like, seriously, listen to yourself talk. So he's wacky, and that a wacky person is not a frightening person. I'm sorry. They're two different things. And so focus on your message, and don't make a gigantic bit out of him talking about Arnold Palmer, except they want to talk about Arnold Palmer because the New York Times and others are now retailing this idea that he is senile, and that there are signs of his mental incapacity and mental infirmity in that he is disintermediated, which is to say that the barrier between what Seth would say was his interior monologue coming out of his mouth, the barrier between the thought and the deed, or the thought and the speech, has broken down. And so he will say anything and do anything. It's like, so was he disintermediated in 2015 when he said he didn't like John McCain because he doesn't like it when people get shot down? That was 9 years ago. That was 9 years ago. If you want to say he's the same person, that's fine. If you want to claim that he's a different person, I don't think that anybody thinks that he's remotely a different person.
Well, here's the problem: is that they were running
Mentally,
against each other. Yeah, they were running against each other. Joe Biden and Donald Trump were running against each other. And the public expressed very strong concern about Joe Biden's mental capacity and not about Trump. So I don't know where this argument goes because we've sort of tested it, is what I'm saying, and the public reacts the way they react. The public has had many years to they think lots of bad things about Trump. You know, he's not Teflon. Like you poll him and it's like, yeah, I think this guy is probably a threat to democracy, and he's gauche, and he's, you know, obnoxious, and he's maybe a misogynist. He's this. I mean, you people say all sorts of voters say all sorts of stuff about Trump, but they don't seem to be concerned about this, and so
Well,
I
they
think that
are.
you leave it. No,
They are.
they're
47% of the American people are voting against Trump.
but I mean they don't.
Yeah.
This particular aspect is that they don't seem to be worried that he's now demented and he wasn't demented before, is what I'm saying. There are things that stick to
Right.
Trump, and this one hasn't stuck. So I would say you stick to things that stick.
Also, Abe, just from the law of associative reality, I don't think the Harris campaign wants to talk about people being demented, because that raises a real liability on her part that Christine is not here, but her favorite issue, which is, well, where was she for a year and where is she now, with the fact that now it is a given. It is a given among the American people and the media and everybody that Biden is not compos mentis and is sitting in the Oval Office today as we speak, unless he's, you know, having his blood recirculated somewhere in Wilmington that I don't know about, or, you know, at the beach. And she was part of the cover-up. Like, don't bring up dementia. That's politically, people, it will bounce off Trump. Unless you're a panelist on Morning Joe, it'll bounce off Trump and stick right back on a weak point of yours, I think.
Oh, I 100% think so. And it's also one too many charges about his mental state or his cognitive state. You want to say he's gauche, you want to say he's disgusting, you want to say he's aggressive, okay? You want to say he has fascistic leanings, okay? You want to say he's wacky, okay? And now on top of it, he's not all there. There's not room enough for this attack. And there's just not the evidence. The people who I hear from, this is anecdotal, who say, oh, now he's really lost it. Interestingly, these are the people who supported him and now have second thoughts. Because this is different from the Kamala line. This is their justification for why they're no longer on board. He was okay. Yeah, he was a little out there back when I supported him, but now he's just gone off the deep end, which it sounds like so much justification.
But I think it's interesting you describe that group of people, because they appear in some of these polling or micro-targeting stories. According to what we're reading, and again, like, they're spending an enormous amount of money on research, Harris's hope is that she can get Nikki Haley voters to vote for her. And that if she can get 20%, the 20% of Republicans who did not vote for Trump in the primaries, in particular in some of these states, like, that could turn the tide for her. And they are, according to the story in the Washington Post, you know what's really effective is having Republicans say they're for Harris, doing ads, doing events where Republicans say Republicans are for Harris. Okay, I wonder how much of this is wishful. I trust that they are spending a lot of money and that they're finding, when they run something with a Democrat saying Trump is crazy or I won't vote for him, and they run something with a Republican saying it, that when people are looking at it and they have a dial in front of them and they push it much more favorably for the Republican than for the Democrat. But I just wonder whether this is more wishful thinking on their part, because what they need is to get the people who voted for Biden to vote for Harris, and they don't have all of them. If they did, she would win the race, or at least she would win the race nationally. Biden won the race nationally by 4 points. She's not up anymore. It's 47-47. That means that there is a withdrawal of affect from her, from the voters of 2020. I mean, maybe they're going to come home in the next 2 weeks, and they haven't come home yet. But they're not home. And then the interpretation of it, which is like, these are all people who don't like the war in Gaza. That's also like totally demented. Where is the evidence that they're people, that these are people who are so deep into issues that they're going to select out Kamala Harris because they don't like that the administration was mildly supportive but is now totally all over the map on Gaza? That Gaza is an issue for very educated people, and maybe for very, very highly motivated Muslims and Jews. It is not an issue for 40,000 people in Pennsylvania who don't know who their senator is. Or, I mean,
and also if
things
you're
aren't adding up together to form a picture of a coherent idea about how Harris gets to 50.1 or gets to 271 or 270 electoral votes.
And also, if you're anywhere in the middle, if you're not a highly motivated anti-Israel voter in, say, Michigan, and if you're not a highly motivated pro-Israel voter, if you're somewhere in the middle, right now you're not sure what you think about the Biden-Harris administration's approach anyway, because they're going out saying things like, "Well, it's good that Sinwar's dead. We helped Israel with the intelligence to get them." To get these high-level leaders. As you say, the administration is not sure how to handle Israeli success at the moment. So they don't even, there's not a position to clearly refute at the moment.
Let's move to the issue of Israel and America and the strike on Iran and the follow-up to the killing of Sinwar. So the story of the weekend isn't Israel's hit Iran, because it hasn't hit Iran, or that terrible things are happening in Gaza are happening in Lebanon, even though people are trying to sell those stories. The story is that someone, and it's possibly someone very senior in the administration, has leaked Israeli battle plans on Telegram. And apparently they're real. Now, maybe this is a fantastic false flag op where Israel has put out bad battle plans or given them to people in the administration to smoke out. Like they've written a fake battle plan. They've given it to people had it gotten to people that they suspect of being Iranian agents of influence, either explicitly or somehow just because of ideological considerations, and that this is a way of flushing them out. That would be the sort of the most exciting thing, right? That would be like
12-dimensional chess.
Yeah, they keep going with their intelligence brilliance in ways that we can't even imagine.
I just want to say on that, I don't think it's likely. I also don't think it's impossible.
No,
because the Israelis have been going crazy over the fact that the administration does leak whatever they give them. That's been a long-standing story.
Right. And it is total spycraft.
Yeah.
To do this. This like Spycraft 101, to send out a fake message to see who reports on the message so that you can locate the source. That's counterintelligence. That's not like putting, doing a beeper operation 2 years before you ignite the beepers. That's like following stuff that people did in the 18th century when they were doing intelligence things and trying to figure out who Benedict Arnold was or whatever. So also in the Bible, they're spies in the Bible, and sometimes the spies lie to you, and you need to figure out whether the spies are lying to you or not. That's like right there in Exodus. So I'm not.
It's also would be a great way if the administration were so minded to smoke out the leakers.
In case the administration
because
might
that
be
is
involved,
used.
right.
That's a common tactic.
Okay,
you give this battle plan A to Joe, battle plan B to Sally, and see which one ends up on Telegram is another thing.
Right.
So maybe Israel is just sort of like, hey, if you guys want to stop the leaks, here's let us help you.
Okay, so that's a possibility. The likelier, the greater likelihood is that somebody leaked some serious Israeli document on Telegram. Now, it's 2 weeks. A lot of people are already voting. October surprises aren't what they used to be. But if the October surprise of this election is that the administration finds itself arresting someone for being an Iranian spy leaking battle plans on Telegram who works for the administration, do I have to go to step 2 on how, game over?
I mean, you already have people, I think, saying, there's somebody there doing this stuff, right? I mean, the most popular explanation for this, as we said, is that there's somebody leaking sensitive information. We've had these stories. We had Edward Snowden, and we had Reality Winner, and we've had a few of these stories over the years where people have, I think people are pretty well convinced that people who shouldn't have access to certain information can access that information. That's a number of things over the years where we've seen people are able to log into a computer system and get something that is not on their particular work menu. And so I think that people are already kind of saying there's a real problem here. But there's also the fact that Robert Malley is not currently in the administration. He's on leave because the FBI is investigating him for mishandling classified information that all indications relate to the Iranians, the Iranian negotiations, and that supposedly, and again, supposedly ended up in the hands of certain Iranians. And that's where we've also seen the leaks in Iranian media, but the other side.
But that's why it's game over if they actually locate the source of the leak, because there is precedent in the administration. Malley and his deputies, it's not just Malley, but 2 or 3 other people have also been put on leave, including an Iranian national, who lives in the United, is a senior official in the State Department whose father still lives in Iran. So the point is that you can connect a dot. That's one degree of Kevin Bacon right there. It's not that it comes out of nowhere. The idea that there are problems with backdoor communications between administration officials and Iran, a country that I believe Kamala Harris described as America's #1 enemy. Didn't she, in some interview the other week?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that's not good that there is a backdoor communication with Iran involving the leak of highly classified documents from an ally. And so you can't just isolate on that. Like the Reality Winner story or the Edward Snowden story, those are different. Those are people in some, outpost somewhere who snuck into a back door and got their hands on gigantic troves of intelligence information and then made them public. This is a specific piece of paper that the Israelis gave to the United States that should not be in any computer. Probably.
Right, and the scandal is that the leaks are still happening after people were suspended and had their security clearances.
That's what I'm saying.
Words,
so all you need to do
Malley's
is say,
sitting on a campus somewhere teaching international relations 101.
Harvard, I believe.
And things are
and
he had a
called
Princeton.
Harvard.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it?
Right, and he and things are still
Or
the leak is still open. He was at Princeton initially, but I think actually he had something at both some fellowship at one. I don't know, but he started at Clemson. But yeah, the
Qataris
point
have a
is,
lot
like,
of money to pay him. So
yeah, he's added at the administration, and doesn't have the security clearance. The leaks are still happening, so it could be a hack that hasn't been fixed, which has happened before, or it could be that the problem is much larger than anybody thought at the outset of this, in which case it's an ongoing thing that we're going to have hearings on, because Mike Johnson in the House, Speaker of the House, is talking about holding hearings on this stuff, and Republicans are going to keep it in the news. It's not going to go away for 2 weeks and then come back when there's new news. Republicans are going to use this opportunity to,
but of course,
go digging. As
we know, and as Abe's favorite point, which is that we don't get to the bottom of anything anymore.
Right.
If you don't really want to find out who the leaker is, you're working at the Supreme Court, you don't really want to find out who leaked the Dobbs memo, the Dobbs draft. Amazingly enough, you're going to somehow not find out who leaked the Dobbs draft. Yeah. I don't know how you pull it. Gee, it was like magic. There were like 100 people who could have had the Dobbs draft. You would figure you could bring them in and, give them a polygraph test. But that would be too, gross or something. I don't know. Anyway, so you can see how the administration could slow walk the discovery of this precisely out of the fear of what I'm talking about, which is, really around October 28th is where the date October 28th will remain in American history a notable one, because that's when James Comey reopened the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails and won the election for Trump. And around October 28th is a week from today. Now, there's less early voting then than now, way less, but, that wouldn't be good for the administration. And where on earth are they going to get an October surprise about Trump?
Right.
Where are they going to get it? There's no such thing as an October surprise against Trump. He's already been convicted of crimes. He's got other cases against him. The judge in the DC circuit is looking to release any possible piece of paper that Jack Smith, the prosecutor in the January 6th case, wants, just to do whatever she can to get Trump to lose.
We're going to get unredacted Jack Smith transcripts before we get unredacted CBS Kamala transcripts.
Oh, okay. We should talk about that for 2 minutes. So CBS released its statement about why it won't release the full transcript of its interview with Kamala Harris. And the statement is extraordinarily obnoxious and totally off the point, because all it does is attempt to turn this into Trump refused to be interviewed by us, making him be the first major presidential not to be interviewed by 60 Minutes in 50 years. And we welcome him to come anytime he wants to. Trump is not the person who is making the case against CBS for having switched around the answer to the question on whatever the hell it was on Israel from the promo to the interview. That is a case being made by thousands of people, many of whom have spent decades, like me, hating CBS News and thinking that it was biased. I go back decades because in 1982, circulated a book proposal when I was 21 years old about 60 Minutes. And about the journalistic malpractice of 60 Minutes. So I got 42 years. I didn't sell it. I got 42 years on this myself. And you got all these other people who are talking about this, and CBS tries to pin it on Trump. Really? I mean, really?
They've also released
that's going to answer anybody.
I mean, the statement doesn't really answer why, once you've done something.
It says we edit interviews.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've released
Donald transcripts in the past.
Yeah.
Of major figures. I mean, somebody was talking about this, and I think that Trump, a previous Trump interview might have been one of them. But yeah, Bill Barr was one of them. Somebody was saying they had like they it's in other words, it's not just like pop stars or people who you might need it to because they don't speak English that well or something like that. I mean, they do this. This is something that they would and I guess kind of have done. So that question remains floating out there.
I think in all, it's a bigger Kamala story than it is a CBS News story. Maybe not for us, maybe not, but the more salient takeaway is she needed help and got it. And that's a bigger story because if someone wants to see something that's on 60 Minutes next week, they'll watch it. But this says something substantive about Kamala Harris that there's just no getting away from.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Obama LA Times tape in a way, even though they're very different stories. But there was this idea that Obama was at an event for Rashid Khalidi, was it? And
Rashid Khalidi is the head of Middle Eastern or Oriental or whatever the hell they call it studies at Columbia. In 2008, there was a retirement dinner for him, I think maybe at the University of Chicago, and there was a tape of Obama's comments, and somebody said, if anybody hears that tape, Obama will never be elected president. And the LA Times had a copy of the tape, and it refused then and has refused ever since to release the tape, a transcript, anything of what Obama said at that retirement dinner for Rashid Khalidi, who is a very, very bad man, was the spokesman for the PLO in Beirut in 1982, was the spokesman for Yasser Arafat and the terrorist organization that had taken over South Lebanon in Beirut in 1982, Obama's best friend by the 2000s. And that tape, we still don't know what's on that tape.
And people just assume there's a reason for that. That's the thing, is that you can't make people not suspicious about a tape or a transcript you won't release. That's the thing with the Kamala stuff, is that if there really were nothing that people would make hay out of, we would have the transcript. So there's just this assumption that it's a confirmation that she got help from them.
A couple more media notes, and then we could. I just want to read you. A but headline. You know how there's a but headline where the but should be an and? Okay. New York Times, Stephen Erlanger, former bureau chief in Jerusalem, now based in Berlin, and notorious to those of us who follow the cases of the Jerusalem bureau chiefs of the New York Times, including the current disgraceful editor of the Forward, Jody Rudoran, who, of course, had to send her kids to a Arabic-speaking school in Jerusalem to prove her bona fides as someone who wouldn't be a partisan because she was Jewish. Sinwar is dead, but a Palestinian state seems more distant than ever. Subhead: a two-state solution remains the goal of the United States and the West, but many in the region say the devastation in Gaza and the lack of effective Palestinian leadership make it a remote prospect. So you mean to say that when you have polling data that suggests that 80% of the Palestinians on the West Bank and in Gaza supported the October 7th attacks, that Sinwar's death, which might be the thing that makes that two-state solution possible, it's just so elusive. I mean, I don't even know if I can even say, am I taking crazy pills? I'm not taking crazy pills. They're taking the crazy pills. What is wrong with these people? I mean, what has gone on in the last year? The United States is supporting essentially an offensive war against Hamas in Gaza. I know that the line that they're proffering is, well, when this is all over, there can be a two-state solution. You know what? That might be true, but it's like the Israelites in the desert. They're going to need 2 generations. They're going to need this generation of Palestinians to die out and a new generation of Palestinians hopeless about the possibility of staging violent attacks against Israel and deciding that they need a better future, plus the collapse of the Iranian regime and other sorts of events to make that possible. And they're having this conversation with themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like constantly focusing on the wrong thing. Like Ishan Tharoor at the Washington Post, who's just he's a foreign affairs columnist, and every column is about how Israel is terrible and Bibi is terrible and all that. The headline on his Sinwar column from yesterday is, "What will Yahya Sinwar's death mean for Gaza? Not peace." Well, I mean, in a manner of speaking, it will mean peace for plenty of people, because Yahya Sinwar spent his entire life killing people, right? It's like, well, we got this murderer off the streets. What does that mean for America?
Who did he kill first?
Not
Seth?
Peace.
Why was he called the butcher of Khan Yunis?
Yeah, because he was killing collaborators. He was
killing Palestinians.
He set up a unit to that was focused on that. He was put on that task by the previous Hamas leader to root out rats. And he just went around.
I disagree with the headline entirely. I think we are closer to peace than we were before. All of which is to say,
that's not
it's
peace.
All a very long way away. But we're not getting anywhere near it. If they said that peace was
closer, if they said, but peace is more elusive than ever, that's obviously absolutely wrong.
Right.
Israel is on the verge of what you might call peace, or the defeat of its enemy, and therefore the peace that comes with the lack of open hostilities.
Right.
And an invading army being there forever, that's peace. Does that mean it's a warm peace? Does it mean it's the peace of Japan and Germany after World War II, where we rebuild their institutions and set them on a democratic course? Obviously not. But there is a madness to this. It is a madness to think that the Israeli political experience of the last 13 months, including, by the way, that the Hamas is still holding the hostages. Like, Sinwar's dead. They could all be coming out today. There was the first sign of a white flag this morning in Jabalia, in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. A white flag was hung from a building. There are signs of things happening, but nothing changes until the hostages are out. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Israel does not, and there is this delusion on the part of Biden or the Biden administration that now that Sinwar is dead, the war can come to an end. It cannot come to an end until the hostages and the hostages' remains are in Israeli hands. The war will never end. It will not be declared at an end. And I know that some people, some weak-kneed people, some very silly people, some rabbis of prominent East Side synagogues in New York and others say, a life is a world, and a world is a life, and Israel needs to declare a ceasefire to get the hostages back. And the last thing that's going to get the hostages back is declaring a ceasefire, because it will be seen as an act of weakness on the part of whoever is left holding the hostages, who need to believe that they will die like Sinwar unless they get him out. That's it. So I don't know. I'm ranting here, but
no, but yeah, I mean, it's like, but it's just a certain impatience. It's like the ADHDification of politics that that Twitter has also supercharged. It's like Hitler is dead, but Berlin is still divided. Well, yeah, all right, we'll give it some time. I mean, the body's not cold yet. Like,
yeah, well, we don't have time because there's 15 days until the election. That's the point. And the Democrats, having decided psychotically that a result that slightly disfavors Israel, it doesn't totally but a little bit, make sure that Bibi doesn't get what he wants in some fashion or other is the thing they need to sweep in 11,000 this Muslim votes in Dearborn that might otherwise stay home. I mean, that to get back to the opening question, if there's 150, 160, 170 million people voting, this micro, nano targeting of Arab Americans in one suburb, in one small area outside of Detroit is how geopolitics in 2024 and the election are thought to be turning. How have we come to this? That's not a rational way to look at an election in a gigantic country. And they have talked themselves into this.
And Trump has played into it too by trying to pit them against each other as well. I mean, like Trump is enjoying the more Kamala focuses on, the Arab vote in Michigan or some micro-targeted community. Trump loves it and takes part in it and says, "Oh no, you can't trust her," whatever. And like they're ping-ponging back on like 15 voters, and he's reveling in it. And the Kamala campaign should understand why he's reveling in playing ping pong over 15 voters. It's hilarious to him.
Okay, Abe, I promised you, because you started and I said we'll get back to it. So let's get back to it before we close off. Joy.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing the joy, said Tim Walz at the convention. Joy, joy, joy. Not the dishwashing soap joy, joy. So you're saying Trump's showing some joy. He's talking about Arnold Palmer Schlong. He's flinging some salt over his shoulder. He's doing whatever. He's dancing. Apparently,
I wish I had his weekend. Okay. He's having fun.
He's having fun. Okay, so I'm allergic to Trump's brand of fun. You are not. So okay, but Kamala joy. So joy, 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 and now it's fascism and psychosis and senility. I am the only thing standing between fascism, psychosis, and senility. I think they're going there because everything else didn't work. That's right. Like joy didn't work. Or if joy worked, it worked enough. It worked. It did its work. It got her up from Biden's 41 to her 47.
Yeah.
Although that could have happened anyway. He could have closed it also, because maybe that's just the partisan divide.
John, I don't know if you remember, it was like 3 weeks ago we were at the office and I said, I'm starting to get the feeling that the emptiness of the Harris Waltz ticket has just been hanging out there a little too long to get a pass. And I'm the one that said, I think it could get a pass till Election Day. And about 3 weeks ago, I started thinking, no. It's actually gone. It's gone real thin now. And I think that's what's happened. And there wasn't, as far as I could tell, a coherent plan B. So the plan B is, okay, now speak to outlets. Now attack Trump on senility. Now go after Trump on fascism. And now so they're throwing everything else at Trump because the vaporware is done. It has lost its efficacy entirely.
My overall view here is that Trump has no business winning this election. Under ordinary circumstances, he would be an extraordinarily easy candidate to beat, despite partisan everything, right? Despite the fact that the parties are divided and all of that. January 6th, there were all these liabilities, including things that are controversial, like his convictions and all of that. But there are all these liabilities on his, and it doesn't have much except the fact that people remember 2016 to 2020 more favorably. He has no business winning. All she had to do was be a plausible person to win the election.
Yeah.
to win the election. And she's not
Couldn't
made that
do it.
sale. I mean, she has 2 weeks, and like maybe it'll be mechanical. That's the thing about close elections. Maybe their get out the vote will just be better. The way Obama won by 4 points against Romney, so you can't really use that as but certainly Obama's get out the vote machine worked and Romney's broke down. So at least we know that as a matter of election day fact. She hasn't made the sale that she is, because that could have been the easiest sale on earth. She goes out, she gives 3 really good speeches on foreign policy. She comes up with some interesting policies on X, Y, and Z. When she engages Trump in direct conversation, she does so in a commanding and literate and interesting fashion. And if we're going to ask about mental infirmity, not that I think that she is mentally infirm, she is just a profoundly mediocre public figure. And if she gets dragged across the finish line and wins, she will be a landmark figure. She'll be the first female president. She'll be the first Indian president. She'll be this, she'll be that. Her troubles are only just beginning, because she is not up to this. She is so not up to this job. She can barely run for president with $1 billion in her pocket. And, that is clear to people who, again,
all these things
anyway.
that are not seen as hurting her or being directed at her will, if she becomes president, right? The people leaking battle plans to Iranian Telegram channels like that, when you're president, that's going to be a huge problem for you. You can't, you may like the idea of staving off an Israeli attack, or whatever this leak may do for you in the campaign. Not that she's connected at all with. I'm just saying you may like the effect of this, what happens. You will not like what it's like to run a government with this happening.
Right. Now, as
and
I
the
say,
ability
Trump
to undermine you at any turn.
Trump has no business winning this race. I mean, I think a lot of people listen to me would say he does because he's good on Israel, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, like, the preponderance of evidence would suggest that a reasonable Democratic candidate could make. Gas prices are going down. All these things that are true that somebody more competent than Harris or than these Democrats could somehow make the case for. Gas prices are going down. Inflation is going down. The economy is in better shape. The stock market is at record values. At 43,000. So people's 401ks are full of value. She's going to help with housing prices. She's going to do this. She's going to do that. Israel's winning and there are all sorts of things that you could say could redound to her benefit. And she had this moment for 2 weeks when she was ecstatically treated by the press. The polls rose 4 or 5 points for Democrats. And had she had the remotest ability to rally and run a disciplined campaign that had a message that she could carry from August until November, which would include that Trump should not be president again. That's, of course, always part of the committee.
She's failed to be a generic Democrat, and that's what she needed to be. If she could just be a generic Democrat and would say, oh, this is not Biden, this is a normal candidate, it's not Trump.
Yeah.
This would have been fine. And she couldn't do that, or she doesn't seem to be able to be doing that.
Right. So it could, if she'd been a generic Democrat, if she'd been and this is where we get to the mental, because I don't think she's very smart. And I don't mean, and I say this because I wasted hours and hours over the last couple of weeks reading the 2 books published under her name. Smart on Crime and whatever the hell the campaign book is that I read the entirety of that I can't remember the name of, like all campaign books published in 2019. And I read a biography of her. And granted, she didn't write the crime book and she didn't write the autobiography and she didn't write the hagiographical biography. But there was not a single impressive thing about her except that she climbed to the top of this greasy pole using the changed political atmosphere around being black and being a woman and being a Democrat in California, as the politics of California were shifting to the left, and riding that. The one time she really wanted to try to take advantage of that was 2019, where she crapped out spectacularly. And had it not been for Biden's decision to try to close some sale by saying he would pick a black woman as his vice president, she would not be vice president. She is a relatively unimpressive person in performance and in what we know about her as a thinker and a speaker and a person, except she's really attractive and she's very presentable on the surface.
And if Biden had decided not to run earlier, when there was every reason to think he shouldn't have run, when a great many people inside the White House and inside the upper ranks of the Democratic Party were leaking and saying, I met with him, I don't know. And then there was some sort of genuine competition for the successor. There's a handful to a dozen of people who could have beaten Trump
easily.
Yeah.
Right, and could have beaten Kamala. That's a point.
Okay, now we're going.
Vice presidents have lost primaries. Sitting vice presidents have lost primaries in the past. So there's no reason to assume that if she had to fight for it, she would still be here.
Now we're really going long. It's three of us, and we're still going long. I do want to mention one final thing about a possible October surprise, though maybe I'm being parochial because I live in New York. But today, the trial starts in the case of the death of Jordan Neely, the crazy guy on the subway who menaced people and threatened them and was put in a chokehold by a veteran named Daniel Penny, 24 years old at the time. And Neely died, and Penny, shockingly, though not surprisingly, was indicted by our beloved Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. Brought to a grand jury, indicted on a charge of second-degree homicide, something like that, recklessness leading to the death of Jordan Neely. I bring this up only because it's a local case, but crime is a major issue in this campaign, usually focused through the lens of immigration. But this is a case where every reasonable man standard known to man says that Penny is being railroaded. He had no prior hostility to Jordan Neely. Everybody on the train was terrified. The trial's going to start. The defense is going to call its case. But the prosecutors, they're going to have witnesses. The witnesses are going to say they were scared. If the trial goes on and gets major coverage over the next 2 weeks, and not just in the New York Post, where Seth and I have both worked, I don't know. I'm not saying this is an October surprise that could take the country by storm, because of course the media are going to present a firewall about allowing that to happen, making it a huge national focus of this discussion. But Daniel Penny is a stand-in for everybody in America who thinks that the country has gone out of control. You can't go into in a city, you can't go into a CVS without everything being locked up, because shoplifting has now essentially been decriminalized. Theft has been decriminalized. Misdemeanor threats to people have been minimized. And if it should kind of emerge as a daily story, it's going to be really bad for Kamala. I mean, it's going to be really bad, because where is the race? Suburbs of Philadelphia, where people are afraid to go into Philadelphia. Suburbs of Wisconsin, where people are afraid to go into Milwaukee. Suburbs of Michigan, where people are afraid to go into Detroit. I don't know.
Well, here's the question. I mean, I wasn't. The question for you guys, I wasn't, I was 2 years old at the time, but is this like a Bernie Getz? Is the atmosphere similar enough to the Bernie Getz subway vigilante narrative that this sort of thing replays.
It's an interesting. It was 1985 that Bernie Goetz, who was a guy riding on the subway, himself got menaced by 4 thugs and shot 3 of them. He had a gun, shot 3 of them, was arrested, had a gun. Everyone said he was a vigilante. Ed Koch, the mayor, said he was a vigilante. It was terrible. And he became a folk hero for a couple of years. And it's not quite at that level because, I mean, crime was so out of control in 1985 in New York that, like, it doesn't feel that way now. It doesn't, it's half that intensity, I would say.
Subways are bad, though, and this happened on the subway.
The subways are bad, but that's a local issue, right?
Yeah.
The thing about Getz was, locally, crime was bad everywhere. And, oh, by the way, okay, I'm going to end on this. So the question, let's just watch. I'm doing a commentary disrecommends. The most disappointing cultural product of the year, if not the decade, is that Lin-Manuel Miranda, author of the single best work of popular art of the 21st century, has issued a new album, a concept album, which is how Hamilton began. It's called the Hamilton Mixtape or something. And now he has issued his latest concept album, which is, I guess, a chrysalis for a show version. And it is a version of, it is a musicalized version of the movie, the 1979 subway movie, The Warriors, which is mostly set on the subway in New York. And a gang has to travel on the subway from the Bronx to Coney Island and evade other gangs that are trying to kill them. And it's terrible. It's terrible. I'm heartbroken. I love The Warriors. I love the novel The Warriors is based on. I love the movie of The Warriors, although it's totally ridiculous now because all the Warriors look like they're chorus boys in a gay men's health crisis production of West Side Story. Didn't look like that then. There were riots in movie theaters when The Warriors showed in 1979. But nonetheless, it's a propulsive, dynamic, great action movie. And for reasons that elude me, Miranda and his co-author Asa Davis decided that the Warriors would be women. So all the Warriors are women, and they're being hunted and by other gangs, and the music is toneless, and the words are kind of wilted. And except for the mention of some beloved New York institutions, like there's an entire song about Gray's Papaya, a hot dog stand on 72nd and Broadway that is beloved to many who live in my neighborhood. I just haven't been disappointed in this way by something that I was looking forward to I mean, I can't even remember how long. It's called Warriors, not The Warriors. I just listened to it on Apple Music while I was driving this weekend, and I'm very sad. I'm just very sad. If anybody has anything positive to say, we could end on a positive note, but nope.
I was gonna recommend people read. There's an old, a lot of the stuff with Israel's Mossad, missions lately has reminded people of Eli Cohen, the great Israel's most famous spy who became a high-ranking Syrian government official. And there is a novelization of that story that is one of the greatest books, one of the most enjoyable books. It's called Jericho Mosaic by Edward Whitmore, who was a spy, in the CIA, and he wrote like this trilogy of these sorts of novels. This is the only one that stands out because it really seems based on the real story. There is something sort of wonderful about the way that this book lays out the characters. In the rest of his books, there's an almost sci-fi element. So this is a book in a series. If you only read this book, you will be less confused than if you read the other books. They were not well reviewed. He died penniless. Like in the 90s, he was not, he was not John le Carre. He did not make a successful career of this, but this one book, Jericho Mosaic, I think it's from the mid 80s, is essentially a novelization of the Eli Cohen story of Israel's penetration of the Syrian government. And it just has some of the best characters you will find anywhere. It's a weird jewel in a, it's the diamond in the rough sort of thing, because he wrote a bunch of these books. They're weird. And then this one just kind of stands out, even though it's part of a series. It works on its own probably better than along with anything else he's written. So if people are interested in the spy craft, there's not a lot of these great novelizations of, the sort of Mossad stuff. It's mostly like TV shows and movies and stuff we see today. If people are interested in, Israeli spycraft and the sort of mythic nature of it all, Jericho Mosaic is actually something that I would recommend. It's a lot of fun.
Am I wrong, or didn't Sacha Baron Cohen star in a miniseries?
He did, called The
Apple?
Spy, I think.
Yeah, called The Spy, which
was
is
Netflix,
which is a docudrama about the same story, but as I recall, was not very good. So I'm excited to hear about this. I have never heard of this book, and I am going to try to find it right now. So that's Jericho Mosaic by Edward Whitmore, and don't listen to do listen to Warriors and see the decline of Lin-Manuel Miranda from Hamilton to now. If you want to be, look, he's very young. He's got 30 years ahead of him. He's written a lot of good stuff between Hamilton and now, including like the score for Moana and the score for Encanto and stuff like that. So I'm not writing him off, but this was a very sad thing. But we close with Jericho Mosaic by Mr. Whitmore, and that's exciting. So we will be back tomorrow, I hope, with a fuller house and a shorter show. Until then, for Abe and Seth, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.